Chapter 2 Intellectual Property Development in Cambodia Objective. After completing this chapter, you can talk about the history of intellectual property in Cambodia, explain the Cambodian Intellectual Property Administration, legal standards of Cambodian intellectual property. 1. History of intellectual property in Cambodia. Intellectual property is one of the leading areas in the new decade in the government's global trade policy. In this situation, the royal government has established a committee to manage the 3 sections of intellectual property, including the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Industry, Mines and Energy, the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts, and the Ministry of Information, responsible for drafting laws related to intellectual property by the Ministry of Commerce. The Ministry of Industry, Mines and Energy receives the draft law, the Utilities Model Certificate and Industrial Design, and the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts receives the draft law. Copyright and related rights. 1. UNTAC law. According to UNTAC, copyright infringement and copyright infringement are prohibited. Any reproduction of music, paintings, photographs, or other works that do not infringe on copyright is copyright infringement. Exporting, importing, reproducing, displaying, promoting products infringing on intellectual property without respecting the author's intellectual property is an infringement. Copyright as enshrined in the Berne Convention of 1886 and amended in Paris in 1971. The 2nd of January 1993 Constitution. Any person, whether individual or collective, has the right to own land. Only natural persons or legal entities of Khmer nationality have the right to own land. Legal private property is under the protection of the law. The state must guarantee, ban and punish any person who imports and produces counterfeit drugs overdue, which affects the health and life of users. 1-3 Penal Code 2009. Stealing is the act of unjustly confiscating the property or other property of another by any means for the purpose of taking it as one's own. Misappropriation, modification or deletion of data in an automated treatment system is punishable by 1 to 2 years in prison and a fine of 2 million to 4 million riels. 1-4 Legal basis, commission. 3 sections of intellectual property. Due to the focus on the field of intellectual property, the royal government issued Proclamation No. 16 of the Office of the Council of Ministers to establish the Management Committee of the 3 sections of intellectual property on the 22nd of February 1999, consisting of the following components. Ministry of Commerce. Chairman of the Ministry of Industry, Mines and Energy as Deputy Director of the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts as a member and Ministry of Information as a member. The 3 sections of the Intellectual Property Commission are responsible for studying and preparing and drafting key intellectual property laws to comply with the WTO entry requirements. 1-5 Before Cambodia joins the WTO. Before Cambodia became a member of the World Trade Organization, Cambodia passed laws on copyright and related rights, trademark law and acts of dishonest competition. These patents, certificates, useful models and industry drawings are in accordance with the TRIPS agreement. 1-6 After Cambodia joins the WTO, Cambodia has continued to pass additional laws related to intellectual property, such as the law on the protection of plant varieties and breeders, geographical marks, commodities and public health certificates, and will continue to work to make the remaining laws to fulfill Cambodia's promises. Within the WTO, 1-7 National Committee for Intellectual Property Management. 1-7 composition in order to contribute to the effective implementation of intellectual property rights and to meet the promises of Cambodia in the World Trade Organization. The Royal Government of Cambodia established the National Committee for the Management of Intellectual Property with 14 ministries in 2008, and 2021 was revised. 172 tasks responsible for coordinating bilateral and multilateral cooperation in the field of intellectual property with countries and international organizations. Coordinate all work related to intellectual property between relevant ministries, co-promoting draft laws and regulations related to intellectual property in the implementation of international agreements and strategic plans. Receive and use technical assistance related to intellectual property from countries and international organizations. Collaborate with relevant ministries to disseminate laws and regulations as well as intellectual property knowledge to the public. Law enforcement officers. Students in higher education cooperate with the competent authorities and the judiciary to prevent and stop intellectual property infringement. Research international agreements and conventions related to intellectual property to consider the benefits, strengths, weaknesses to report to the royal government. Make an annual report to the royal government.